Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So, it's almost ironic that just a few weeks ago, it was confirmed that Sony pays to block games from entering Xbox Game Pass. And now here we are today with a seemingly instant karma. A Sony-owned game is in fact now heading over to Game Pass. And I don't think that they really have much of a choice on the matter. Yeah, this is just a whole weird thing, but we will discuss that today as well as a few more Day 1 Xbox Game Pass games because, hey, why not? I guess Xbox has just been busy over the last couple of weeks, but yeah, should be a fun time for you subscribers out there, or at least, for the most part, we do have one unfortunate piece of Game Pass news as well. Also, Nintendo seems to have a new strategy that could potentially impact this holiday in a quiet, but also major way. So we'll also be talking about that. Before we get started though, just a little reminder of those buttons below the video, you know, the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons. Yeah, if you like gaming, I would definitely recommend hitting those buttons. Why wouldn't I, right? Let's jump right into the video though, and we might as well just go ahead and get the bad news out of the way first. Of course, this is hardly surprising anymore. You probably know exactly what I'm going to say before I even say it, but yes, it's another delay. Yeah, I know, right? In 2022, just shocking. I would have never guessed, right? But this is actually a game I very much am looking forward to being high on life. You all have heard me talk about this game at various times on the channel, as it's a comedic first-person shooter from Squanch Games, the same talent that worked on Trover Saves the Universe, and Justin Roiland, the co-creator of Rick and Morty. High on Life just looks like this hilariously fun time with an interesting take on the first-person shooting genre, but sadly, we're gonna have to wait just a little bit longer to play it ourselves. It was originally slated for October, but has now been pushed back to December 13th. So, I mean, I guess the good news here is that it will still release in 2022, and it's really only a 2-month delay, not even quite a 2-month delay. So, nothing really too major here, and actually, as a bit of a silver lining, I honestly believe this might be even better for High on Life and just consumers as a whole. Now, I know you're probably wondering why is that, but the reason I say that is because October is very busy. Yes, there's been a lot of delays this year, no doubt about it, but if there's any month that has a lot going on, well, that's October. Of course, you have Call of Duty releasing in October. You also have Bayonetta 3 that's coming out of the Switch. But then you also have to consider this is a Day 1 Xbox Game Pass title. And that's the thing. There are several other big Day 1 Xbox Game Pass games in the month of October. You do have Persona 5 Royal, you have Scorn, and you also have A Plague Tale Requiem, which are all coming to Game Pass Day 1, again, in October. So, I mean, with that, I look at that and I think, yeah, this is probably for the best. High on Life can be polished just a little bit more, and I personally like when games get spaced out a little bit, that way they can receive the proper exposure that they deserve. So if there was ever a game delay that I view as a good thing, this one here might be it. Speaking of A Plague Tale Requiem a moment ago, it does seem like that October 18th release date is now locked down. I know, right? When a game doesn't get delayed, it's just huge news anymore. But yes, they just released a brand new gameplay trailer, which looks really good, by the way. Definitely go check that full trailer out if you're interested. More importantly, though, they also announced that Requiem has officially gone gold. Now, for the most part, when games go gold, their release date is pretty much set in stone. I can only really recall one game getting a delay after going gold, and that was Cyberpunk 2077. As we all kind of know, that game did have some launch issues. But more often than not, this is very good news. And now you can kind of look at October 18th as its release date with a lot more confidence. This to me though is one of the most exciting games releasing this holiday. The first game was very good, and if you do like story-driven experiences or if you like stealth-based games, I definitely recommend checking out that first game. But if you've already played it, you'll know exactly why its sequel is just so highly anticipated. A Plague Tale Requiem, of course, though, is heading over to PlayStation, Xbox, PC, the Nintendo Switch through the cloud, surprisingly, and then also Xbox Game Pass. This is yet another Day 1 Xbox Game Pass release. Like I said, a lot of Game Pass news today. Switching gears here for a moment though, a PlayStation console exclusive, Kena Bridge of Spirits, will be receiving a significant update for its 1-year anniversary on September 27th. This will include New Game Plus and a new Spirits Guide Trials mode, which are probably the most notable parts of this update. They're also going to allow players to individually equip Charm Stones to provide different adjustments to Kena's stats, and then they're also going to be adding some new outfits, including an exclusive for Digital Deluxe owners. Now, all this will be free, so I mean, you really can't argue with that. And for even better news, as a part of its 1-year anniversary, that also means it's now escaping that 1-year timed exclusivity deal on the Epic Game Store. That means Kena Bridge of Spirits will now be purchasable on Steam starting September 27th. And I will say, this is a good game. I mean, everybody kind of recognizes just how beautiful it is with those Pixar-like graphics, but I think it's also a lot of fun. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Zelda, but it also has a heartfelt story, and the combat can be quite challenging, surprisingly. I would definitely recommend Kena Bridge of Spirits for those who haven't played it already, and I think the studio, Ember Labs, is a studio to kind of watch out for. The fact that this game is coming from such a small independent studio, it is seriously very impressive. I'm excited to see what they do next, but I also wouldn't necessarily be surprised if different publishers are kind of sniffing around for a possible acquisition. Now, I guess we'll kind of see about all of that, but definitely check out Kena Bridge of Spirits. Let's go talk about the big, shocking Game Pass news, though. Earlier this week, as we talked about on the channel, it did seem like the PC Game Pass account on Twitter was teasing Death Stranding out of all games. I mean, this was all very unexpected, but they did post multiple pictures that looked oddly similar to Death Stranding. And I mean, fans actually found these exact locations within the game itself. But even then, there was still some disbelief out there that this could actually happen because, you know, it is in fact a Sony-owned game. Now, we all kind of know how Sony feels about Game Pass. You don't really have to look much further than Resident Evil Village, where they paid to keep it off of Game Pass. So, you know, with that, this is certainly a very weird and ironic situation. But, I mean, I guess it was possible after all because they just confirmed it today. Yes, Death Stranding officially is now heading over to PC Game Pass on August 23rd. Now, this is not the director's cut, so it is just the vanilla version, but for PC Game Pass subscribers out there, it does, in fact, support Xbox achievements. Yeah, it's kind of strange to think about, but you will, in fact, be able to unlock achievements for a first-party PlayStation game, and that will forever be tied to your Xbox account, even if you played it on PC. What a turn of events, though that's kind of the thing about this specific release. I have seen some confusion online on whether or not Sony actually owns this game, and yes, they very much do in fact own the IP. You can actually see on Steam, Sony is listed as the first trademark despite not publishing the PC version. That there's kind of your explanation though on how all this is even possible. 505 Games is actually the publisher on PC. You have to keep in mind that Death Stranding was one of Sony's first PC games, so they did things a little differently back then. They were still kind of testing the market and everything, and they just decided to pass it off to another publisher. And because of that, I don't think that Sony really has much say on where it releases on PC. That's instead handled by 505 Games. That's probably why all this is possible, and it's probably also why this is just the vanilla version, and not the director's cut. However, I think that's also important to keep in mind for Xbox fans as well. I have seen some console owners kind of wonder if Death Stranding will eventually head over to Xbox consoles since, you know, it is coming to PC Game Pass. But no, that will not happen. PlayStation completely owns the console rights for Death Stranding. It will remain a console exclusive. But nonetheless, this is still a very, very cool thing to see. Again, the fact alone that you're going to be able to unlock Xbox achievements for a first-party owned PlayStation game, that is kind of crazy to think about. I, however, do want to highlight one other thing here, though, and that's regarding the rumor of Hideo Kojima showing a new trailer for his next game at Gamescom. He did seemingly tease a new trailer in a tweet earlier this week, and, well, I guess that speculation was true after all, or at least to an extent, but not necessarily for a new game as previously rumored. They did drop a new Death Stranding trailer for PC Game Pass, as you can actually see on screen right now, so that's more than likely what he was actually teasing. So don't go into Gamescom expecting a new announcement from Kojima. For those that voted with some skepticism earlier this week though, it looks like you all very much might have been correct after all. Now, we do have one more thing to go over today, and that's for Nintendo. I feel like they've been a little quiet here recently. Sony as well, actually, but I am hoping news for them will start to pick up here soon, maybe with those rumored showcases next month. I do hope those are true. But nonetheless, we do have some Nintendo news to talk about today. Nintendo has a new strategy that might not necessarily seem like a big thing at first, but I mean, it could actually really impact the Switch going forward and just further reaching that demand. As we all know, for all these console makers, they are dealing with various manufacturing and shipment issues, and while Nintendo hasn't been hit as significantly as Xbox and PlayStation, the Switch still has without a doubt been affected. It's one of the reasons that they've had to scale back their sales expectations. They just can't manufacture enough consoles, but they're planning to do something new that could alleviate some of its issues, and that's to reduce the size of the standard Switch packaging by 20% to increase the efficiency of its console transportation services. I guess I never really thought about this before, but for whatever reason, the standard Switch does come in a bigger box than the Switch OLED, as an example, and they've really stuck with that packaging for quite a while, even though, again, they reduced that with the Switch OLED. I mean, I have both consoles, so I'll include a side-by-side picture here, that way you can kind of see the difference, and yeah, that Switch OLED is in a much smaller package. So I assume with this news here, the standard Switch will be in a similar package as the Switch OLED, and while consumers might not necessarily see a big benefit in terms of their own purchase, this is good news for any fan that's looking to buy a Switch this holiday. That means Nintendo will be able to ship more consoles at one time, allowing for bigger supply drops. It's one of those sneaky good business decisions that quietly impacts consumers as well, is what I'm trying to say here. Now, I mean, we're still dealing with a chip supply shortage. That's not really changing right now, so Nintendo will still be affected in that way. But nonetheless, this is still an improvement. Before we move on though, I just want to kind of say, if you are looking for a new Switch this holiday, and if you're kind of deciding on whether or not you want the Switch OLED or if you want the standard Switch, as somebody who does own both, if you want to primarily play in handheld, I would highly recommend spending that extra $50 on the OLED model. It is such a huge improvement, and I think it's well worth that extra $50. And I mean, I just find myself playing the Switch much more now compared to what I did prior to that upgrade. It really does make a big difference, so I just wanted to go ahead and throw that in there for anybody who is on the fence. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, and just with so many acquisitions over the last few years, I wanted to gauge how you all feel about this overall situation. So I asked you all, are you concerned that we're seeing so many acquisitions in the game industry? And as you can see here, most of you all are not. 63% of you said no, while 30% said yes. So most of you all are not concerned, and I will say that I am kind of with you all here. I think for the most part, I'm not really against acquisitions. There's a lot of game developers out there, and we're really in a time of history where it feels like we're just getting more games than really ever before. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, and it feels like now there's just so many more games than when I was a kid, whether that be from big publishers or small independent developers. There's just a lot of new and interesting games coming out all the time. I will say, though, that I don't want this big trend of big publisher acquisitions to continue. I'm okay with the Activision Blizzard acquisition because, I mean, they were a mess, and ultimately, I think with Xbox taking over, it will be better for the company and consumers alike. It does sound like their big popular franchises like Call of Duty will remain multi-platform, and then Xbox Game Pass subscribers, they'll get day one releases. That's kind of the big benefit for Xbox fans. I also feel like it could lead to more variety within Activision Blizzard as opposed to them just becoming this Call of Duty factory. It did feel like Activision was kind of heading into that direction prior to the acquisition announcement, but because the inclusion of Xbox Game Pass, Microsoft, they would benefit more from variety. So I think with that, everybody kind of wins here, but I'm also hoping this will be the last big publisher acquisition. I mean, I guess we'll see. Ubisoft continues to pop up in these topics. I could see them being a target sometime in the future, but regardless, as long as these big publishers stay multi-platform, I don't think it'll necessarily bother consumers too much. It's one of the reasons when a third-party publisher like THQ Nordic purchases somebody, that it just flies under the radar a little bit more. Either way, though, without a doubt, I do expect acquisition season to continue, and that does include both Sony and Microsoft. I do imagine that they will continue to be very active in terms of new buyouts. Maybe not necessarily Nintendo, as, you know, they just kind of do their own thing as they typically do. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.